I know many of you are on the road, and I hope I can get your commute just a bit easier by providing you great content, great questions. Coming up in hour 3 today, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joins me for a quick around the world checking in on China, Russia, Israel, South America, Central America, our armada in the Caribbean. What's he think about that? Brett Baer and Byron York will be along in hour number 2, and this hour, Michael Duncan of the Ruthless Bry podcast, one of the fellows, will be joining me, as will David Drucker, senior writer at the Dispatch. But I thought I would start by telling you I've got a question for you for your Thanksgiving dining room table. Now, I used to do a Thanksgiving show for many years about the kind of questions that would drive wedges into the meal, such as, so, isn't Sarah Palin the greatest thing ever? Like, that was a 2008 question for Thanksgiving 2008. But I don't do that anymore because the fellas are stepping in over at the Ruthless Podcast, and we'll get a preview of what their Thanksgiving show is from Michael Duncan after the break. I actually gave them thought to what Jan Janura would call turning small talk into big talk. That's the postcard that he sent out to a bunch of his friends when he published his national bestseller, Turning Small Talk into Big Talk. And this is one of the questions that may not be in his book, but it's in the spirit of the book. All right, the spirit of the book is, how do you actually have great conversations when you gather a bunch of people together and you don't want to end up in arguments, you don't want to end up angry, you do want to end up with some substantive conversation, you do want to learn something about the people around the table, you want to have a good time, you want to have a memorable deal. You want your dinner to be full of Thanksgiving. And never mind the kiddies table, never mind the ones who are throwing the rolls at each other, that's all fine and good. But if the moment arrives and you have a chance to ask a good question, here's my suggested question. What is the most important book with the greatest impact on your life that you have ever read, and that may not be scripture of any tradition? We're taking all of the revelation off the table. We would expect normally Christians to say the Bible. We would expect Jews to say the Bible or the Torah. We would expect Muslims to say the Quran. I'm not sure what Buddhists say, but we would expect people of faith to say their faith scripture. So I want to take it out of that. So take it off the table. We're not talking about religion here or what has mattered to your faith life, but other than that, what book has had the most impact on your life? That will normally get a lot of blank stares at first, but people will think about it and they'll come up with something. And you'll get all sorts of different answers. You'll get fiction and nonfiction. You might have a poet. I doubt it, but there might be a poet out there. And when you're done with that, I have a list of 5 that I want to suggest to you because I answer my own question. The first one is not the most important book I've ever read. It's just a very good book that everyone ought to read. Wilfred McClay's Land of Hope. It is the very best book on American history, start to finish, soup to nuts, available anywhere at any time right now. And if you need to give someone a Christmas present, accessible to junior high kids, high schoolers, anyone older than that. It's written in a very engaging and fun way. It tells the whole tale, warts and all. It's not politically correct. It's not woke. It's good old-fashioned American history. It's the spinal cord on which you can hang every other story of the American experiment. And ours is the greatest country in the history of the world. And this is the greatest book on the greatest country in the history of the world. And Land of Hope, An Invitation to the Great American Story, has taken off like hotcakes in the last few years as school districts around the country want to find a book that is objective but not neutral. That's Wilfred McClay's phrase. Very objective about what happened in America over the last 250 years, but it's not neutral. Wilfred McClay knows we have the very best country in the very best shape of any country in human history. We got lucky, friends. We got very lucky. But then I have 4 other books to suggest to you, and this might be the reading list for your 4th, 5th, 6th grader up through 12th grade. Depends on how well they read. The book that's been most impactful on my life, I've answered the question a number of times, is Alexander Solzhenitsyn's very small novel, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. Takes about an hour and a half to read, 2 hours to read. And it got into my hands because my oldest brother, brought it back from college when I was in 8th or ninth grade, and I read it, and I was just transfixed by it. Turned me into an anti-communist, got me interested in Stalin, got me interested in the Gulag, got me interested in Solzhenitsyn. And really, the greatest writer of the 20th century is Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I don't even think it's close. But that is a short and accessible book. And if you read it, you'll really appreciate America. Second book. Now, Alexander Solzhenitsyn published that in 1962. So it's been 63 years out there on the shelf. Some of you may have already read it. You may have forgotten about it. The great Solzhenitsyn died in 2008. The second book is also by a Russian who's also dead. Vladimir Bukovsky died in 2019. His book is called To Build a Castle, My Life as a Dissenter. It came out in 1978. I read it maybe a year later, and it's a slap upside the head about just how evil the KGB was. That's when they were putting political prisoners in the psychiatric hospitals and treating them with psychiatric and psychotropic drugs, and how Vladimir Bukovsky survived that, and how he turned the bureaucracy of the Soviet Union against itself by exploiting the rules that the lower level bureaucrats had to respond to. He eventually drove them crazy. They were trying to drive him crazy. He drove them crazy, and they threw him out of the country. And the result is To Build a Castle, My Life as a Dissenter. Book number 3 is by Armando Valladares, who is still alive. He's 88 years old. Bukovsky wrote his book in 1978, Against All Hope, a memoir of surviving in the Cuban Gulag, was written in 2000 when Armando Valladares got out of the Cuban Gulag. And a lot of people in America don't really know how awful Cuba is. They take the tourist trip, they walk through Old Havana, and they say, well, how quaint this is. It's a totalitarian dictatorship. It's a police state. They have dungeons and gulags, and they execute people without due process of law. It's a horrible place. And their health care isn't that good either. Don't believe that lie. It's a terrible, horrible place. And Armando Valladares told the truth about it. He spent years in that prison system, and he writes to tell about it. And I think you ought to read it. He's alive. He's 88. May he have a great Thanksgiving wherever Armando Valladares is. And then the last book came out in 2004. So all these books are all 20 years or older. One is 62 years old, 63 years old. This one came out in 2004 by Natan Sharansky and Ron Dermer. Now, Ron Dermer ought to be a name you know because he, until recently, was the senior advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu. But Natan Sharansky and Ron Dermer had to be like 30 years old when he helped Sharansky write this book, is called The Case for Democracy. And it's an argument. Now, Natan Sharansky, one of the great Russian dissidents as well, great Soviet dissident, who inspired and encouraged not just Soviet Jewry, but freedom-loving people around the world, because he just would not bend the knee to the Soviet authorities. And he was finally expelled. He went to Israel, became very active in the Israeli political life, joined a government or two. He's maybe the greatest living Jew. I heard John Podhoretz. They roasted him last year. Can you believe it? They roasted Natan Sharansky, which would have been something to see. I wasn't there, but it really wasn't a roast. It was a series of tributes to the extraordinary courage of this. Now, why read Wilfred McClay, Land of Hope, and then 4 books by people who were crushed by totalitarian governments for most of their lives? Solzhenitsyn, Bukovsky, Valladares, and Sharansky. Well, the contrast, obviously. What we ought to be thankful for the most on Thanksgiving is that we live in the United States in 2025. There has never been a better place to live. There has never been a better time to be alive than the United States in 2025. Now, it may get better in 2026. It might get worse in 2026. You don't know. I don't know the future, but I know the past. And as of right now, unqualifiedly, I can state the best time to be alive is now, and the best place to be alive is here in the United States. And if you need to know why, read about what it's like to live in a totalitarian state without a constitution, without a rule of law, without decency, without respect for human rights, without freedom. That's the way to run Thanksgiving. What book mattered the most to you? Could be, it might be Pillars of the Earth. I've heard that a lot. Ask that question, but try and steer it around to the fact that we're all very blessed to be living in the United States of America. Without question, no debate, we won the lotto. It is game week. This is something that my next guest will not have experienced. Michael Duncan, being from Indiana, doesn't really have any experience with championship football. Although, did you go to IU, Michael?
I did. I went to IU. And I've been to a couple of games up there in Ann Arbor. Back in the day, I saw Desmond Howard. I saw Tim Biakabatuka, wonderful running back from the University of Michigan. I've seen a lot of games up there. You don't doubt my knowledge of the Big Ten.
I'm just curious if you're optimistic about the Big Ten championship. Should you get past your opponent this week and make it to Indianapolis next week?
I think Ohio State is probably the most complete team in the country. I think they've proven that out week after week. But I gotta like the odds for IU. I think Fernando Mendoza might be the best quarterback in the country and could likely win the Heisman Trophy. So I think it's gonna be a great game.
Propaganda. Julian Sayan's going to win the Heisman Trophy. Come on. I didn't realize boosterism was going to come as part of the package, Michael. But did you ever see a game that mattered at IU?
I saw the game that mattered to us, and that was the Oak and Bucket game, the rivalry game against Purdue, the one I expect IU to win handily this weekend. That's the game that mattered when I was there. We were more of a basketball school. Now we're an everything school.
Good luck. I hope you guys make it at second seed. Big Ten should get both of the two top 10 seeds. Top 14, two of the top 14 seeds. Michael, I also want to thank you. I was out for my trundle this morning, listening to the fellas. You guys dropped your episode early, so I was prepared when John Roberts hit me with the AOC story today on Fox America Reports, and I'd already known that the whistle had been blown. I gave her the benefit of grace, given that this is Thanksgiving week. Maybe she didn't know. Because it's such a dumb thing to have done. Do you think it's possible she didn't know? Why don't you explain to people what she did?
Well, she sent out a fundraising email about raising money for families in need around Thanksgiving, which I think is an admirable thing, obviously. But she used Act Blue, the Democrats' fundraising vehicle, to raise this money. And so, of course, people, being skeptical of that operation, are wondering whether all this money is going to where it needs to go, to needy families, or whether there's some operation that the campaign's going to be taking a percentage of these funds. I would love to believe that it's just a pass-through. But you know what? Maybe just to include a link to the Salvation Army. Why run it through one of these political processors? It just makes it look bad.
After I heard you guys talking about it, I got the note from Fox that it would be coming up, so I did a little more digging. Do you realize that when you're about to make the contribution, they tell you this is not tax deductible, which to me means it ain't going to a 501c3. Sometimes they'll say only a portion of your donation is tax deductible and you have to, account for the turkey or whatever. But when they say it's not tax deductible, it's not going to the turkeys, Michael, right?
I mean, you have to wonder. Right. I guess if it flows through a political campaign and it's passed on, you don't get the tax deductibility back to a C3. But, maybe they need to answer for that, and hopefully this ends that this whole scheme that political campaigns use to raise money through their political vehicles to do ostensibly charity work. I just don't like it. Stop doing it, please.
I agree. And I was kind of shocked and they're getting hammered. Second big question of the week is the Subversion 6, the video by the 6 Democrats telling enlisted and officers not to obey illegal orders. What was your reaction to that, Michael?
I thought it was terrible. Seeing some of these Democrats talk about how people enlisted in armed forces should oppose orders from the commander in chief. It just feels weird. I don't know why these Democrats can't just let Donald Trump do what he's doing as commander in chief. I feel like he's doing a great job in foreign policy for the United States of America. He's trying to bring peace to places like Ukraine. He's brought peace already to the Middle East. I just don't get it. It's like they're desperate to pick a fight with him on this stuff, and I just can't understand why.
Do you think they ran that past anyone? Because that someone obviously has an idea. Someone has to go and find six people to be in the video. Alyssa Slotkin leads it off, so maybe she leads it off. I don't know, but have we seen a postmortem on whose idea this was yet?
I don't think so. I think Hugh. I think they're desperate to get that energy they had during Trump's first term back. I mean, they've called him a fascist now for the better part of a decade, but it doesn't seem like people believe them anymore. And so it seems sort of like a desperate move from these Democrats to sort of get that juice that they had back in 2017.
Now, my second question comes from the first video, which is Pete Hegseth put out a post blasting Mark Kelly, who's a retired officer, '06. When you're '06, you can be recalled to duty. The other ones did not serve, did not retire, cannot be recalled. He threatened, or not in the post, but others have threatened to recall Commander Kelly or Captain Kelly to active duty for the purposes of seeing if he was suborning insubordination. I think that's a terrible idea. What do you think, Michael Duncan?
Yeah, I don't want to politicize this any more than it already has. Honestly, I mean, I don't think this is a winning fight for anyone in particular. I think it's just bad. It's bad politics. It's bad for the military. Keep politics out of the military, in my opinion.
Agreed. Now, final question. I used to devote my Wednesday before Thanksgiving show to questions that might spice up Thanksgiving. I'm not doing that anymore because I sense that is what you guys are going to be doing on your Thursday morning show. Am I right about that?
100%, Hugh, and you know this better than most, but our Thanksgiving spectacular here at the Ruthless Variety Program is a tradition that we love, where we give you the advice of how to deal with your liberal relatives on this holiday. It's the kickoff to the Christmas season. It's one of our favorite weeks in doing the show, so I highly recommend people listen in on Thursday for that advice and early. Listen to it early so your whole game plan for the day.
What is the drinking plan for the day among the fellas? Do you begin cooking with a little bit of the creme de menthe, whatever you put in the turkey? I don't cook. I have no idea.
Well, Hugh, it depends, and this is important. This is a good question. Thank you for asking. It depends. Is this a road game or is this a home game? Because if it's a home game and it's your house, you can start drinking whenever you want. It's your home, your domicile, right? If it's a road game, you got to be a little more discerning. You want to make sure that you have your best material at Thanksgiving dinner, and that you can make it through all of the football games, obviously. But if it's a home game, all bets are off.
All right, well then, we will be listening on Thursday morning to the Ruthless Podcast. Make sure you read it, listen to it first thing in the morning, get your exercise in, get your appetite up and going, get your advice on how to turn it into an absolutely spectacular Thanksgiving. Michael Duncan, thank you. John McLaughlin is pollster for Americans for Lower Healthcare Costs. You can go to stophealthcosthikes.com to learn more about that. John, welcome. When last we talked, the government was shut down over the issue of credits for insurance. Now, there is a middle ground here, and I think the president is looking for it. What is that middle ground?
I think you have it right, because the middle ground is, and by the way, we just did the survey for Americans for Balanced Budget, and we did it November 10th through the 11th. So, and we did 800 likely voters across 16 battleground congressional districts. And the big concern is affordability, where you have, and it's become a big Democrat word, but the Republicans, we're the ones who don't want to raise taxes. We're the ones who want to protect working people with healthcare tax credits. The president, and you're seeing these reports out of Washington where he's saying, we'll extend the healthcare tax credits, but what we want to do is we want to have some sort of means testing where you don't give it to people who really can afford to pay for their own health care. But this is meant for people that say maybe working 2 or 3 jobs and their employers don't provide them health insurance. And so
Yeah,
what we'll do is we'll have it sealed up, but
I like
also
to point out to people we did not get to keep the doctor that we had as we were promised. We did not get to keep our health insurance. And some people really got screwed. Now, some of the people who got screwed have a lot of money and we don't have to worry about them. But some of the people who got screwed don't have a lot of money and they got really screwed. I think that's the demo the president is looking for. Am I right?
exactly. You're exactly right. Plus, the president would also rather do it where he gives the people the money, where the average person would be able to have control of the funds so that they could buy their own health insurance. That you wouldn't have to worry about, like the health insurance premiums keep going up for these healthcare companies, and it's higher than the rate of insurance. So if the consumer, if the voter actually had control over their own health care and their choices to be able to buy it, there would be some more accountability here. So, but the bad part is the Democrats, they're like ruling it out of hand. I mean, they shut the government down, to throw sand in the engine on the GDP, et cetera. But with healthcare, a lot of these Democrats, they'd like to see the whole thing collapse and have government run healthcare. They would like the government to, your point about, keep your doctor, et cetera. They want the government to be your doctor. And God help us then, because then you'd see what you see in Canada, where they have long waiting lines. You don't have the same health quality of health care. Canadians come to America for health care when they get really sick
So,
because they don't get taken care of.
Americans for a Balanced Budget send you out to find out what works and what people want. When those battleground congressional districts, what does the majority of the voters, both Republican, Democrat, and Independent, want when it comes to health insurance?
Well, I mean, 9 out of 10 of them are concerned about their healthcare costs, and you've got, when you ask about affordability, the biggest concerns are healthcare at 39, groceries and food is second at 38, but it's about the same level margin of error, and 73% are concerned about their healthcare premiums rising next year. These among all voters, and they support the healthcare tax credits for these working voters 70% to 20%. So you've got like you said, there's for people that need it that are working, they support the healthcare tax credits, and they're very concerned about affordability. They're very concerned about the healthcare costs, but it's like the Democrats have to come and meet the president with, if they're really sincere and they want to protect working class voters so that they can afford to buy their own health insurance, they got to meet President Trump, towards the middle where, okay, we'll extend them, but you want to give the voter or the consumer more control over buying their own health care. And at the same time, you want to have some sort of means testing that, people that are, really could afford to buy their own health care, that you're not subsidizing that.
Yeah, we cannot allow 100% subsidy continue. It's way too expensive. It will bankrupt the country. And there will be no incentive for health insurance companies to make any kind of decisions that are based in sound actuarial science. John McLaughlin, always good to see you. Always good to be updated on the data. Stay out there in the field because this is going to be the biggest debate by January 30th. Everyone's going to want to know what is the appropriate solution to the fact that premiums are skyrocketing for the middle class. We do not want that. That's because Obamacare has collapsed. Head over to StopHealthCostHikes.com to find out how you can weigh in along with Americans for a Balanced Budget. That's at StopHealthCostHikes.com. StopHealthCostHikes.com. The game is this Saturday, so of course you get this bump. David Drucker's used to it. He's been doing the show for a long time. David, is USC UCLA this weekend?
It is, and I hate USC, and I live for this game and want UCLA to win. I'm also very concerned that they're not going to hire the right coach, and sometimes I wonder if losing will make them just remind them how desperate this dumpster fire of a program is, so that they make the right decision this time.
David, the good news is Chip Kelly got fired by the Raiders after he lost to the Browns, so he's on the market.
Apparently, the only place he could win was with Ohio State, so congratulations.
That's where all he had to do was offensive coordinator there, so he's moved on. Do you know that UCLA is trying to break their lease with the Rose Bowl? I find this to be despicable. They signed a 44-year lease with the Rose Bowl, They've always played their home games there. They play the Rose Bowl there, and they're trying to break it. As a proud alum, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I have real mixed emotions. I understand in the age of NIL and paying players. I mean, this is now a very high, well-paying minor league thing. That's what college football and college basketball are. So I understand wanting to maximize revenue, but it's not a good look. And I think that a lot of longtime fans and alums, and those two are sometimes the same, but not always, are very suspicious that the administration at Morgan Center is trying to paper over the fact that they've let this program wither and almost die. I think it'll be a lot more well received if the head coaching hire is a good hire, is the right hire. Notwithstanding how I feel about the idea of breaking a lease and leaving the Rose Bowl. You know, I started going to UCLA games when they still played at the LA Coliseum, grew up
Oh,
going to the Rose Bowl. It's iconic. I'm no longer on the West Coast, so this is not going to affect me personally in the way it's going to affect so many other people. But you know, if they don't fix the program, they're going to move from an empty Rose Bowl to an empty SoFi Stadium, and so it's really important to
that,
get the head coaching hire correct.
well put. Well put. Wherever you are, by the way, if people are watching on the Salem News Channel, wherever David Drucker is, I want him to invite me there. That is perhaps the best backdrop I've ever seen, David. You've set that up very nicely. A little ocean, a little dune grass out there. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving coming up. But now I want to talk politics and I want to talk California politics. Eric Swalwell is getting into the governor's race. That makes about 100 Democrats. Do you think it's possible that Steve Hilton and one other Republican could win the jungle primary so that it's just two Republicans?
No, I don't think so. I just think that I think that our politics are too polarized, and I think it's just going to be very difficult for a Republican to emerge out of that morass. First of all, Hugh, we have to see if this crowded jungle primary for round one stays crowded. A lot of times you'll see people rush in. This happened because Katie Porter now looks weak and flailing. So a lot of enterprising Democrats are thinking to themselves, you know, the next governor could be me. Let's see how many are able to raise money and be competitive. California's a big state. You know, people really aren't that interested in retail politics except once every 25 or 30 years. So it requires enormous amounts of money on TV and a lot of money for field. That's number one. And number two, I just think that, you know, what we saw from the vote for the redistricting initiative shows that there is an intense amount of anger at the Trump administration. California is very Democratic, meaning Democratic Party these days, much more so than in its blue days, you know, from 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so I just think it's going to be hard. Now, if the right kind of Republican ran, right, with the right kind of profile and was able to market himself as somebody that was different than Sacramento, but also different than Washington, that would pique my interest in terms of something to watch for. But so far, I don't see that, and so I think we're likely to get, you know, left versus far left in round two of the top two system in California to be elected the next governor.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic Hilton will make the final two. I just find him to be a very engaging, charismatic customer who's going everywhere and doing everything. But between Rob Bonta and Javier Becerra and Katie Porter and Eric Swalwell and a half dozen people I don't know, I have no. I guess Antonio Villaraigosa is running as well. Do you have any guess?
Tom
Are you making
Steyer.
any guess? Tom
No, I
Steyer,
think it's too
yeah.
early. Yeah, I mean, he's got lots of money. Not that it's helped him before. Look, I'm not making any guess at this point. At some point, I will focus more on this race, and I'll have some more informed thoughts on it. But this is my 30,000-foot look at what politics looks like today, including in California, but in part based on how this last vote looked just a few weeks ago.
Okay, quick exit question. Donald Trump is dangling a deal on tax credits for Obamacare exchange buyers, something I'm not opposed to if there are means testing that makes sense to me because a lot of people got screwed by Obamacare. What does he get in return from the Democrats for that?
Well, first, he has to get Republicans in the House of Representatives on board with his plan. They're very hesitant to engage with something like this and to support it. Ditto Republicans in the U.S. Senate, although there are some, like Katie Britt, that are a part of this negotiation. So let's see how hard the president works this. Let's see if he can get Republicans behind him. Then we start to look at what the Democrats have to give up, because then you can message the fact and talk about the fact that we are trying to deliver this for you. And it's the other side that is holding this up.
Yeah, I think there are a few things that he could ask for having to do with border security, having to do with additional reforms at the state level with regards to education curriculum. There are a whole, and school choice. That is there someone who's a mastermind of the policy ask over there at the White House, do you think?
I don't know these days. What I would say, though, is that I would keep this all about affordability. If they want to include other policy sweeteners and asks in this, I would make it all about bringing prices down in other facets of the economy, and I would not deal with asks having to do with other things, even if those things are good and necessary and all of that. And I think that's how you get voters to understand that you're focused on what they're focused on the most.
David M. Drucker, a very good Thanksgiving to you. Enjoy it. I hope you do the dishes because whoever is hosting you is doing a very good job of hosting you. Thank you, David. Follow him on X at David M. Drucker. It is that week, the week of the game, Saturday noon. Cannot wait. Go Bucks. Now, some of you are caught in traffic. I know that. Talked to my daughter already, who is coming to grandmother's house for Thanksgiving, and the roads are already full of Thanksgiving travelers. A lot of people wait for Wednesday. Some people are crazy and wait for Thursday morning. That's the worst. But a lot of people try and get a jump on Tuesday, and they call in and they take kids out of class on Wednesday and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. But you're in the car right now, and you've probably got kids in the car. So this is a message designed for them. Right now, Prison Fellowship is sponsoring a campaign on my show to raise money for Angel Tree. Now, Angel Tree is a ministry of Prison Fellowship. It's a Christian ministry, and they believe in taking care of the children of people who are in jail because they made a mistake in their life. They committed a crime, and they have to do the time inside of jail. And think about how sad that makes the children at Christmas when mom, and sometimes mom and dad, or sometimes just mom, is not there because they have to serve a prison sentence. What Prison Fellowship does through the Angel Tree Ministry is raise money to give each child who has a mom or a dad in jail a Christmas present that that child wants, and they consult with the mom or dad who's in jail. That mom or dad writes a note to their beloved child who they do love a lot. They don't love them any less because they made a mistake and they're in jail. And Angel Tree puts that note together with a Bible for young people and the present. Say it's a basketball, might be a Barbie doll, I don't know what it is, whatever the present is, and they deliver it to the child on Christmas morning. You see, and you've probably seen Angel Tree tables on every church patio in America because over 30 years it's become one of the most popular ways to celebrate the season. You don't have to wait for the tree to go up or the table to go up on your patio at church. You can go over to Hugh Hewitt right now and find the banner at the top, or you can call them at 888-206-2764. And if you're listening right now and you have kids in the car, think about talking to them about what it means to have a mom or dad in jail and how hard that is, and why you as a family are going to give 1 or 2 or 3 presents. $90 is 3 presents to 3 children to make their Christmas that much brighter with a note from mom or dad and a Bible. It's a great way to do it. The banner's over at hughhewitt.com. Let me also take a moment and remind everyone that the 10-year, it's a good day on the market today. Everything is green. That's good. The Dow's up 1.5, the S&P's up 1, the Nasdaq's up 0.77. Nvidia's getting killed for reasons I don't understand. But the 10-year Treasury is down to 4.007. 4.007. That means probably a 30-year mortgage around 6, maybe a little bit below, maybe a little bit above. Call andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. This is a great time to buy a house because there's not many buyers out there. It's a buyer's market, and rates are coming down. Go to andrewandtodd.com or call them at 888-888-1172. If you're a veteran, you want to put any money down, they take care of you. If you're a senior, you want a reverse mortgage, they'll take care of you. Call them. Brett Baer, of course, is host of Special Report Monday through Friday night at 6 on the Fox News Channel. Brett, I want to begin by asking you about Thanksgiving. I have now, because I had boys like you, I've aged out to where I don't have to do anything. I don't have to carve turkeys. I don't have to do dishes. I get to sit around and watch football. What's your job on Thanksgiving?
I make reservations.
Ha! Okay.
And I pay the bill.
That is
we
fair.
We usually go out, and there is not a lot of dishes anymore. But it's great fun. We get the families together, and we'll be down in Naples, Florida for that.
That is a very fair thing. On Saturday, the game is being played. I hope you're for Ohio State. Will you make time to watch the game?
Yes, that's going to be a good one. I think what is the spread now?
I don't know the spread. I know we've lost 4 in a row. I don't look at the spread. I don't care about the spread because we've lost 4 in a row, and I'm afraid of the spread. I want them to just throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate the whole time. Brett, I want to ask you about President Trump on 2 fronts. The first is the Russia negotiation, about which I've heard pretty much every version of what's going on. What's your understanding of what's going on with the Russia-Ukraine negotiations?
I think everybody was scared that the 28-point plan was all that was coming, and that Capitol Hill was up in arms on both sides, that it was too Russia-friendly. I think my understanding is that it was a starting point and that there were talks in Geneva that advanced the ball, and then the Army Secretary became a part of this negotiating team, also meeting with the Russians, and that they are close to ironing out a back and forth between Ukraine and Russia, and that the differences are few, but they still have to be ironed out.
I am not an optimist about that because everything I've heard is territorial concession by Ukraine, and that's always been a red line. Is there any indication from who you have been talking to that Russia has backed off the demand for territory they don't already hold?
I think that they have backed off taking territory that they don't already hold, is my understanding. Well,
that would be good. All right, second big topic of debate and discussion in a week where there normally isn't anything is the president has dangled tax credits and subsidies for Obama.
Yeah.
Hey, Brett, we just lost Hugh, so he was picking up on Donald Trump. Do you have anything to say about that?
Sure.
I'm back.
There you go. The Obamacare situation is, it's about getting time to hunt to figure out a plan. And I think that there were some Republicans that thought that was a capitulation that they were not ready to do. And so that created some turmoil, which is why that the announcement got punted until a later date. I don't know when that's going to be.
Do you have any idea what he wants out of that? Because that's a big give. If he gives tax credits, even if they're mean tested, there's a good argument for that because some people didn't get to keep their doctor, some people didn't get to keep their insurance. If in fact he wants something, do you have any idea what he wants in return?
I don't what the specifics are about how this plan lays out, but they are trying to restructure and figure out how to get people to buy plans with money that they give them. Listen, I think that it's a web when you start going down to unwinding Obamacare. The reason the marketplace exchanges, they didn't drive down the cost, which is why the subsidies had to be added. Now the subsidies are coming to an end, and everybody doesn't want to pay exponentially more for their health care. I think they need time, and what the Republicans on the Hill are saying is 2 years is not the time. Give us a deadline to figure something out, but don't punt for 2 years by just giving subsidies.
A couple of
a couple of the alternatives. John Kennedy is wanting to do a reconciliation bill, a second reconciliation bill, and is upset that Republicans are wasting a lot of time. Is there any mood amongst the House Republicans of trying to do a second bite at the reconciliation apple?
I think that's very possible, and with the right pitch, they could sign on. The problem now is that they're just dealing with a majority that is ultra slim and getting slimmer. With Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that she is out, you start just adding the numbers, and the majority is not that great. So Speaker Johnson would have his hands full trying to get things across the finish line, but with the right pitch, another bite at the reconciliation apple gives Republicans another chance to figure something out, as long as they fall within the stipulations of those bills.
I'll let you go early because we have got an extraordinarily iffy internet situation today, the wireless. But you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and remember to pull for Ohio State come Saturday.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving. See you.
Okay, we're going to kind of limp through the rest of this segment with Hugh coming in and out. I'm not sure what's going on with the bandwidth where he's at, but let's go a little bit to the White House today, where Donald Trump was doing his annual tradition that presidents do of pardoning turkeys. He had some interesting things to say about the birds. He pardoned his two, and then he pardoned two from the prior occupant of the White House. Let's go to that. Let's go to that first.
The turkeys being pardoned today go by the names of Gobble and Waddle. When I first saw their pictures, I thought we should send them. I shouldn't say this. I was gonna call them Chuck and Nancy. But then I realized I wouldn't be pardoning them. I would never pardon those two people. I wouldn't pardon them. I wouldn't care what Melania told me. Darling, I think it would be a nice thing to do. I won't do it, darling.
So I'm back now, and I don't know what's going on, but we'll fix it before too long. My internet got wobbly there, which is odd because it's fiber optic, which shouldn't get wobbly. But I want to go to the second part where Donald Trump was doing the pardoning, cut number 4.
Before going any further, I want to make an important announcement because you remember last year, after a thorough and very rigorous investigation by Pam Bondi and all of the people at Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, the White House Counsel's Office, and the Department of Everything. We have a Department of Everything. You know what that is? I think that's called the White House. Into a terrible situation caused by a man named Sleepy Joe Biden. He used an auto pen last year for the turkey's pardon. So I have the official duty to determine, and I have determined that last year's turkey pardons are totally invalid, as are the pardons of about every other person that was pardoned other than, where's Hunter? No, Hunter's was good. That was the one pardon, Pam, that was good, right? The rest of them are all invalid. I don't know what the hell you're going to do about that, but now we're going to take a little of the joking. That is a mess. But they're hereby null and void. The turkeys known as Peach and Blossom last year have been located, and they were on their way to be processed, in other words, to be killed. But I have stopped that journey, and I am officially pardoning them, and they will not be served for Thanksgiving dinner.
Okay, that's pretty funny. The auto pen turkeys have gotten a double pardon.
That is very funny.
That's pretty funny. I want to now remind everyone who caught me at the end of last segment, I was talking about andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172, and my clock's off as well as the fiber optic. So I want to remind you, the 10-year Treasury went down to 4.007. I believe that's the lowest. I don't think it's been below 4 except for a cup of coffee in years. That means the perfect time has arrived to refinance or buy the house you've been putting off. And right now is a good time to be a buyer. Some people have got to move. They got orders to move. They got to move because they're in the military. They're in a corporation. They got to go somewhere. They got to sell their house. It's a buyer's market, and now interest rates are coming down. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. As I said last hour, whether you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down, they'll handle it. If you're a first-time home buyer and you want to make FHA your first borrowing source, they'll do that as well. Senior citizen, you're over the age of 62 in your house, you want to do a reverse mortgage, never make another mortgage payment, Andrew and Todd do that as well. They are a bank. They are with Union Mortgage. Give them a call, 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172, or go to andrewandtodd.com, andrewandtodd.com. I think some people from that state up north are messing around with my internets. I wouldn't put it past them. That's why I want you to get webroot.com. Webroot.com, great sponsor of my show. This is the season for great gift giving. It's the season for online shopping. It's also the season for cyber theft. Keep your devices safe. Keep your identity secure. Keep your privacy locked down. And right now, 75% off Webroot Total Protection at webroot.com/Hewitt. That's 75% off because I want to get you into the program before the thieves get to you during this season. Black Friday through Cyber Monday is the busiest shopping time of the year. And for hackers and identity thieves, it's the Super Bowl. Don't wait until something goes wrong. Get protected now. With my exclusive discount, Webroot Total Protection is less than $50 for the entire year. That's all-in-one protection. Devices, identity, privacy, even backup for under $50. Peace of mind for $50. Honestly, that might be the best gift you give yourself and your family. Go to webroot.com/Hewitt. That's 75% off for a limited time. And since I'm talking about gifts, let me talk about besthotgrill.com. My friend Rhett Rasmussen has been making these. It's a family business forever, the Solaire Infrared Grill. And he and Irene run an amazing shop. They produce the best grills in America, the Solaire Infrared Grill. And right now, through December 5th at besthotgrill.com, they've got a couple of specials. One thing, they're offering 25% off their Solaire Anywhere and Solaire Everywhere portable infrared grills. That's what you get for your favorite client. They're also a perfect gift for a college graduate, a tailgater, a boater, an RVer, a picnicker, or a foodie. Just want to take their grill with them. And through December 5, if you purchase the 27-inch or larger Solaire Infrared Grill, you'll get a free stainless steel griddle and a Quality USA made cover to protect your investment. That's a $650 value. But you got to move now. And that griddle, make eggs, pancakes, smash burger, fajitas, pizza, whatever you want. Learn more about professional free style grilling and your professional grill set at Solaire Infrared Grills over at besthotgrill.com. Now I want to go back to the president. You won't believe me until you try Best Hot Grill. And you can try it before you buy it in some cases. You're not going to believe me until you do about how great it is. The president did divert to talk about Chicago today, cut number 6.
You saw all the crime that took place last night, the night before. The woman with the burning, they burned the woman. To be talking about that now, they burned this beautiful woman riding in a train. A man was arrested 72 times. 72 times, think of that. And they'll let him out again. The liberal judges will let him out again. But we're ready to go. You know, we've been moving toward Chicago. We have a governor that thinks it's wonderful that only like 7 people were killed this week. But we are moving toward doing it, and we're going to, if crime gets, it's horrible what's happening in Chicago. We could make Chicago a safe city in a period of 4 weeks. In a period of 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, it would be totally safe. And the people of Chicago want us to go there. And if you look at the crime that's taken place in Chicago in the last 2 weeks, just take a look. It's on the front page of every newspaper.
Right. He's right about Chicago. You can't get me to go to Chicago. He's right about Chicago. But Pritzker's never going to invite him. I don't know what the courts would say. I was on Fox News earlier this afternoon with John Roberts. I mentioned this in hour one with Michael Duncan. Here is that exchange with John, cut number one.
Let's bring in Fox News contributor Hugh Hewitt for his perspective on this. Hugh, great to see you this Tuesday afternoon. I just want to set this up because here's the email pitch from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It said, Thanksgiving is 2 weeks away. Will you chip in $5 or anything you can today to help us bring the joy of the holiday season into homes around New York City this year? Now, according to the New York Post, you click on that link and it takes you not to a community fundraising page or some sort of community organization, but to a fundraising page on Act Blue that says, please donate anything you can afford right now to give hundreds of families an opportunity to celebrate community mutual aid and gratitude this year. Then in the choose amount section, it says, your contribution will benefit Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. A lot of people are saying this is bait and switch. What do you say?
Good afternoon, John. I heard about this story this morning when I was out trundling and listening to the fellows on the Ruthless podcast, and I could not believe it. Because Americans have two buckets. The bucket for political contributions, about every year we give between $15 and $20 billion into political contributions. Into fundraising, we give $500 billion or more. $500 billion or more. Americans are a very generous people. They're very different buckets, and we have different motivations for giving into one or the other. It appears as though AOC's campaign switched the buckets in that there is also, the New York Post notes, you do not get to deduct the contribution you make to the turkey campaign she is running. That means it's not a 501c3. That means it's not a charity. That means not only are they getting your money, they're collecting your information for future appeals, which we all love to get on our phone. You know, the text asks for giving. So I'm going to actually give her a little grace and perhaps indulge the belief she did not know that her campaign consultants were doing this, because it's so dumb. She's not dumb. She's actually a very savvy political operator. But this is so dumb and so scandalous, and it will be so off-putting. I'm going to let her deny that she had anything to do with it and offer to refund the money, because it's just so dumb. Americans do not want to give money for turkeys and find out that it's going to turkeys in office.
Yeah, what's also interesting about that is that there is you have a choice between making a one-time donation or a recurring donation. It's a one-time turkey fundraiser, but if you go with the recurring donation, where's that money going to go? Criticism she is getting from both sides of the political aisle. Here's the former city council minority leader, Joe Borelli, who says a campaign is not supposed to be a pass-through for charitable work. What if she raised enough money for 1 million turkeys? Would she buy 1 million turkeys, or would she keep $990,000 for her campaign and then throw the rest of the turkeys at the back of a truck and take a photo op? And this from Councilman Robert Holden, Democrat from Queens, who says socialists like AOC and Mamdani love to promise everything for free, but somehow it always ends with them shaking down working people under the guise of community goodwill. When you receive bipartisan criticism, typically you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, this stunt is a piñata. Everyone's going to get a swing at it because it's such a bad and an obviously bad thing to do, to trick people into giving money to your campaign. Again, her only defense is, it wasn't me, it's not my dog, it didn't bite you first, I didn't know about it. And she'd better get that out there in a hurry, because it's the kind of thing that leaves a mark. Fire a consultant, fire a bunch of consultants, give the money back, but get out of the turkey business and don't do it again, because it is very off-putting, especially at a time when we ought to be generous to people who need our charity.
Absolutely. Amen.
AOC needs to get out of the turkey business, like yesterday. I couldn't believe it. I heard it this morning on the Ruthless podcast. I said, how could anyone be that stupid? Especially when they add the little, oh, by the way, this is going to benefit AOC and you can't deduct it. Then you know it's a scam. I am very confident in predicting that 10 years from now, Ohio State will be the hardest university to get into in the United States. Harder than Harvard, harder than Yale, harder than Stanford, just impossible to get into, because it's going to be right smack in the center of a tech revolution, right smack in the center of the best sports programs in America, right smack in the center of affordability. Columbus is going to blow up. Go out there now and get your house there. Good people running a great university. It's a great time. And say a prayer for the game. Now, I have an ask. I've already gotten many requests for the book list I gave in my opening monologue today about the Thanksgiving dinner question that you can ask that will lead to the conclusion that we are very blessed to live in America. Best place to live at the best time to be alive is right here in the old US of A. And that question and the answers I gave you in the books I suggested, Harley will post that over at my YouTube channel. You'll be able to get it later today. If you're a subscriber, it will push out to you. What I'd like to ask you to do is please subscribe rather than send me a note saying, can I have the list? If you subscribe, you get the list. And I'm 800 people away from my YouTube plaque. Now, why do I want that YouTube plaque? I don't like plaques. I don't put up plaques. But it means that the algorithm has to take notice of and push out our videos more than they do videos at 50,000, more than they do videos at 25,000. It's not 1 million, not 2 million. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for smart people. And if you want to be informed, we don't do too many of them, 4 to 6 a day. And you don't have to watch any of them you don't want. Skip on by. But I do need you to like and subscribe at Hugh Hewitt at YouTube. My second ask of the day is about Angel Tree. Now, I've done this for years, and this audience is generous. This audience knows that there's a very large prison population in the United States, and they are human beings, and they have children. And they ache when they can't be with their kids at Thanksgiving, and they ache more when they can't be with their kids at Christmas. But Angel Tree allows for some connection. When you give $30, another child will be gifted a gift, a Bible, and a note from mom or dad from the prison that mom or dad is in, saying, hey, son, hey, daughter, I'm thinking of you. Here's the gift I've got for you. Could be a basketball, could be a book, could be a doll, could be whatever the kid wants. The Angel Tree volunteers are very good about finding that out. They talk to mom and dad in jail as well. They're all over the prison system in the United States. We do have a lot of people who are incarcerated. We have a limitless supply of children, some of whom won't get gifts this year because we won't raise enough money. But every time we get another $30 given, another child gets taken care of. There's a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. You cannot miss it. It says, give the great gift of Christmas to a child this year. Little pile of Christmas presents. It's the Angel Tree banner. You cannot miss it. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way. You can call right now. 888-206-2764. 888-206-2764. Now, you may be asking, yeah, that's a lot of money. $30, I need that for my kids. Maybe it is. It's a large pizza. It's a meal out. Maybe you can give 5 Angel Tree presents for a meal out these days. But there's a way you can save money and give the money that you save to Angel Tree. That's with consumercellular.com/Hugh. How do I know that? Because you'll save $25 with Consumer Cellular if you use my code Hugh25. So I'm kicking in 25 and you're kicking in 5. That's a joke. You're actually kicking in the 30. But you'll save $25 when you go to consumercellular.com/Hugh and you make the switch and use my code Hugh25. You can also call them 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. One more time, 1-800-411-4454. Now, you probably are getting too much data. If you're over 50, you're almost certainly getting too much data. Ask about their special for only for 50-year-old and older people. You got to be over 50 years old. You get 2 lines of unlimited data. Keep your old numbers, keep your old data, keep your old contacts. The switch takes 20 minutes to do. And for $60 a month, you're covered, no matter how much data you use. Almost certainly, you won't use that much data, but you're paying too much right now. Get your phone bill out before you call. But remember, whether you call or whether you go online, consumercellular.com/Hugh or 1-800-411-4454, use my code Hugh25 and save an additional $5 off each of the first 5 months. And I'm sure Byron York of the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor extraordinaire, is also reading for The Ohio State University on Saturday, so I will skip that part. Byron, I've known a lot of political consultants in my life, as have you, I imagine, right? We meet them in green rooms.
I believe I have, yes.
Okay. So I think 2 of the dumbest have surfaced this week. First of all, someone advised AOC to run a turkey giveaway that ran through Act Blue and alerted the donor that the money was going to AOC and was not tax deductible. How stupid was that?
Well, first of all, it was admirably honorable when you made the donation. It says this is not going to the turkey. This is going to Act Blue. So that's kind of honest there. But the whole idea was just kind of mind-bogglingly stupid. Because if you are going to do something to actually help people around Thanksgiving time, then you should actually help people. If you're going to buy them food, then buy them food and give it to them. Don't lie about it. So it made her look bad and stupid, which is really
now I don't think she's dumb. And so on Fox earlier with John Roberts, I said, I'm giving her grace. She's not that dumb. This was a consultant trick. Do you think that's possible, that she just signed off on something and didn't know that they were running it through the campaign coffers?
Well, she can't really come out and say, "Oh, my consultant tricked me." That doesn't look so good. It's possible, yes, it's possible that she just wasn't paying attention, and they said, "We're going to do this," and she said, "Great." But this is one of those buck stops here issues. I mean, she's the boss in this particular thing.
Then she better get out there and apologize and stop and hurry, because it's bad even if you don't know it, but it's worse if you do.
It might be good to give a lot of turkeys away, too.
Yeah, it might be good to be out there from dawn till dusk with the turkeys. Yeah. Second dumb consultant move. The 6 Democrats, beginning with Elise Slotkin and, of course, Captain Mark Kelly, they made that video. There's a story there somewhere. Someone came up with that idea. Someone sold it to 6 Congress people, and nobody ever stopped to think whether it was a good idea. Do we know who was behind that yet?
No, we don't. And, the most amazing thing about that was that this was a claim, a campaign built on a claim that could not survive the first question asked. The first question asked being, well, has President Trump issued any illegal orders? And then they have to say, well, no, and the whole thing falls apart. So, I mean, this is not three-dimensional chess. This is just thinking, okay, what's the first thing we would be asked if we did this? And do we have an answer for that? And when they decided that they did not have an answer, that it would have to come up with something ridiculous like the Nuremberg trials or the movie A Few Good Men, then they should have just dumped the idea altogether.
Byron, in my line of work on the radio side, I get handed scripts all the time. And I have creative control. I can choose to read them or not read them. And more than once I've had to say, nah, I'm not going to read that. So they got handed a script, and they had to say, don't give up the ship, don't give up the ship. And someone had to explain it to them. And do you suppose there's one consultant to all 6 people? Or do you think one of the candidates or one of the incumbents got the idea and sold their friends on it?
Well, these are 6, separate office holders. So my guess is that there are separate people involved in this. And did they all, the actual principals here, the members, talk to each other before doing this? I don't know. I mean, they only said like 6 or 8 words, you must refuse an illegal order. And there may have been no real discussion between them about this.
Don't you think it's a fascinating story? I don't know that we'll ever find out. We've got a newsletter for every hour of the day in Washington, D.C., from Punchbowl to Axios to Semaphore. Would one of them come up with it's a Democratic story, so you and I aren't going to get it. Maybe you will. Maybe you have some friends on it. But somebody should be really in the corner with a dunce cap on. Does anyone come out of this looking good?
No, absolutely not. You would think that even biased media outlets asked this question that I mentioned earlier. I mean, Martha Raddatz asked this of Alyssa Slotkin
yes.
on ABC. All right, so it's the obvious first question that they couldn't answer. So I think there's a possibility, but I do think there's something that happens, which is event A happens, and MAGA world or Republicans or the conservative world or somebody makes a really huge deal about it. Then there are many people in the press feel like they have to knock that down. They just have this instinctive desire to knock that down. So in this case, there's really no defense for what the people did, other than to say, well, it is true in the military that you're supposed to not not enact an illegal order. But there's no defense for making this video, at this time, no rationale, no illegal order to talk about. So I just don't feel like any people in the press are going to invest a lot of time in this, because it's been such a big deal on Fox News that they just feel like they would rather knock it down, or if not do that, ignore it altogether.
Martha McCullum had one of the 6 on, and if it was a
Yes.
fight, they'd have stopped it. It was just so brutal because what order are you talking about? You can only say you can only filibuster for so long. Okay, second important question. I would now leave it alone if I were the Republicans. Would you proceed against Captain Kelly, who conceivably could be ordered to show up and announce himself? I would not touch it if I were the Republicans. What do you think?
I totally agree with you on this. I mean, this is a political fight, and Republicans have responded politically. It was a political attack, and that's where it should be. And the idea of applying some sort of military justice here, it just strikes me as overkill. This is a claim that Mark Kelly, who may or may not want to be president of the United States, made, and he's taken a lot of criticism for it, which is entirely appropriate, but just leave it at that.
Yeah, do not snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Byron York, thank you. Follow Byron at X, at Byron York. Generalissimo, we have a great sponsor at the Hugh Hewitt Show, myphdweightloss.com, 864-644-1900. That's
864-644-1900.
Google has just released the state-by-state favorite side dish at Thanksgiving. So I'd like to know if you can guess the favorite side dish in the District of Columbia and whether or not it's on the MyPhD waitlist acceptable foods list.
District of Columbia.
Yep.
Green bean casserole.
Mac and cheese. You lost.
Okay.
Is mac and cheese on the MyPhD weight loss?
Absolutely not.
All right. How about in Vermont? What do you think they like in Vermont?
Vermont. Probably stuffing.
Roasted Brussels sprouts.
Oh, yuck.
Oh, I hate them. But do you think that's on the MyPhD weight loss list?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. How about Rhode Island?
Rhode Island.
I'm not giving you any easy
mashed
ones.
potatoes.
No, pumpkin risotto. How about the wonderful state of Ohio?
Grits. I don't know.
It's the same as in Michigan, in Indiana, and Kentucky. In Illinois, those 5 states have the same favorite side dish. And I can attest to the veracity of this.
Would this be the yam casserole?
No, this is the green bean casserole.
Okay.
I hate it. How about Arkansas?
They're probably into the yams. Sweet potato.
Glazed carrots. Would glazed carrots make it on the MyPhD weight loss?
Actually, not really. Carrots are not actually that good for you. They have some things in them, but they're very high in carbs.
Okay, how about South Dakota?
South Dakota.
This one surprised me.
Okay, it's got to have something to do with rocks.
No, stuffed mushrooms.
Oh, yee.
How about Utah? Balsamic glazed carrots. Is that part of the MyPhD weight loss?
No.
Going over to Nevada, it's corn casserole. Does that make it?
No.
And then we've got California, which is the same as Arizona, which is the same as New Mexico, which is the same as Virginia and Massachusetts. So this is a bi-coastal old standby.
Okay, California. Tofu.
Stuffing.
Yeah, stuffing. Yeah. You don't want stuffing.
You don't want stuffing. In fact, I don't think any of the... Do you know what Nebraska is?
No.
Ramen noodle salad.
What?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
It is. So Minnesota is deviled eggs.
Oh, you see, that's protein. You can get away with that.
Really?
Yeah. Oh,
deviled
yeah.
eggs is also Virginia.
Yeah, you can get away with a limited amount of that. That's
and my very
protein.
last one, Delaware.
Okay.
Brie mini tarts.
Probably not.
Probably not. 864
644.
1900 to find out what you can have for My PhD Weight Loss Thanksgiving side dish. Consult not Google, but myphdweightloss.com. And former Secretary of State, former Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, former member of the United States Congress, former West Point graduate. I guess he's not a former West Point graduate. Always once a West Point graduate. Secretary Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, good to see you again. Are you a little bit worried about the Army-Navy game this year? Because Navy looks pretty strong.
Navy looks good. That's usually a good sign for the game, though. We've looked strong in years, and we've gotten crushed by them. So, you got to be strong to be an Army football fan. I'm ready for anything.
All right. Let's get to the serious stuff. We learned today that there are going to be home and away meetings between President Trump and General Secretary Xi, with President Trump going to China in April. Date yet to be determined by General Secretary Xi coming here. What do you make of that news? Does it give you any angst?
Oh, goodness. I have no trouble with the meetings. I think having a conversation with them is fine. But we can't walk away from the central thesis, Hugh. In the first Trump administration, we made very clear. Chinese Communist Party under Xi Jinping is an adversary of the United States of America. Xi Jinping's global intentions for hegemony are real. His efforts in the Pacific, right? We can see this. We see how he responded to just a mere statement by the Japanese prime minister. I don't think Xi Jinping has changed one lick from Trump 1. And so if President Trump chooses to meet with him to try and convince him to see the world our way, I'm fine with that. But we can't sell him stuff from America that could put American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines at risk. And we need to be ever mindful that Xi Jinping wants us to live in a world that looks more like his than ours, and that is just unacceptable.
Now, we have a new prime minister of Japan, and you just referenced that she said very strong things. I believe they are adding assets to their islands closest to China, even as we speak. What do you make of her position, and what do you make of China's reaction to it?
Look, I think she's got it right, for sure. There's no taking of Taiwan without Japan having an enormous security risk. Indeed, when there's ever a threat or a conflict, Japan will be drawn into it immediately. It's just geography. You can look at a map and say the planes fly here, they're going to be in Japanese airspace immediately. And so I thought her statements were perfect. They were clear. They weren't threatening to the Chinese Communist Party. They stated her fundamental view, which is Donald Trump's view of America. She's putting Japan first. She's going to protect Japanese sovereignty. And the Chinese reaction was, as it always is at Taiwan, over the top. Wolf warrior diplomacy, and frankly, I think the whole world stares at it and says, come on, guys, don't be silly. This was a diplomatic statement by a prime minister of Japan, and for you all to respond in the way you did demonstrates you're concerned about your own internal political stability, I think. The fact that you don't actually speak for the Chinese people directly, and I think also reminds us all Xi Jinping's determination to capture politically Taiwan and our necessary resolve to prevent that from ever coming to be.
The wolf warrior diplomacy, I wonder at what point it becomes cry wolf diplomacy, because we're all so used to it, and that might not be a good thing. Let me raise with you one name, Jimmy Lai. I've asked Secretary of State Rubio, I've asked the president about it. They both have assured me he's on the agenda, but his name doesn't come up. What do you think about that, Mr. Secretary?
Well, I understand that it may well have been raised quietly with them. I'm fine with raising it quietly. We know Jimmy Lai. I had the incredible honor to meet with him when I was Secretary of State in my office in Foggy Bottom. This was just a man who was doing his level best to create a media outlet that spoke freely about the conditions in Hong Kong and in Greater China, and for that he's been imprisoned. Jimmy Lai should be released immediately by the Chinese Communist Party. He's being held on bogus charges. I hope President Trump and Secretary Rubio and all of the folks, our ambassador there in China, I hope they're all speaking to the Chinese government about this directly, forcefully, and making this stated with moral clarity that Jimmy Lai needs to be released immediately.
Now, would it make Xi look weaker or stronger to do that, Mr. Secretary? Because I've always thought when regimes release political prisoners, they look stronger, not weaker, but I'm not sure that Xi sees it that way.
Yeah, I don't think he does either. Hugh and I, we think about the world differently. I agree with you. From a Western perspective, that would demonstrate strength, not weakness. But I think internally, their leadership says, look, we don't want him out there. We can't have Jimmy Lai out there rolling around telling the truth about what's taking place here in China, about the virus that came out of the lab in Wuhan and all the other things. The denial of basic freedoms and property rights in Hong Kong is tragic for the people of Hong Kong. Jimmy Lai just simply spoke those truths, and for that, they need to try and silence him, and that's what they've done. And I think, too, Jimmy Lai also sends a message to others who might be speaking out about the terrible conditions in China, and I think putting him in prison tells, from Xi Jinping's perspective, tells other Chinese who might just follow in his footsteps, don't you dare do it, I'll put you in jail, too.
All right, let me move to the second leg of the alliance of tyrants, Russia. There's been so much reporting on the talks between Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff, various Ukrainian representatives, various names in the Russian media. How do you understand what's going on? And obviously people talk to you that don't talk to me, but I'm just confused as to what's going on.
Hugh, I'm a bit confused too. Let me try and actually bridge these just a little bit. We shouldn't forget that there's 10,000 plus North Koreans fighting, killing Ukrainian kids today. That's at the direction of Xi Jinping. And so when you're meeting with Xi Jinping, you are meeting with an ally of Vladimir Putin. Make no mistake about it. As for these conversations, I think there are deep divides inside the Trump administration about what would be acceptable to the United States in terms of the outcome. I think there's been a bias towards Russia in the sense of saying, look, only the Ukrainians have agreed to a peace settlement. Now we have to do something that the Russians will actually agree to. The latest reporting from today says that the Ukrainians now believe they have a strong security guarantee. It is that very strong security guarantee that I suspect will convince Vladimir Putin he can't take this deal or won't take this deal. Putin hasn't agreed to a single Trump plan yet. Zelensky agreed to a ceasefire. You'll remember that, Hugh. Zelensky agreed to a previous version of a deal. Now Zelensky has said, yep, here's a plan that's acceptable to the Americans, and Putin has rejected them 1, 2, 3 seriatim. And then in Anchorage did the same. So I'm not optimistic that Putin and Lavrov, his henchmen, will sign up for anything that the Ukrainians are willing, or even for that matter, able to accept.
If this falls apart, and I think it will fall apart because of the little clues I've seen on territorial concessions, what does the American public need to know about supporting Ukraine? Because I think we've got to keep sending them the wherewithal to continue to fight.
Here, the American people should understand that Ukraine winning, and we don't talk about winning enough, and winning isn't just about geography and where the lines get drawn. The perception that Vladimir Putin's aggression, killing Ukrainian kids, hurts America, or that perception that he wins from killing Ukrainian kids hurts America. It makes our life more difficult. It means that the Iranians, the Venezuelans, we're now down in the Caribbean trying to oust Maduro. I think that's all to the good. They're all working together and watching how the United States responds when aggression is foisted upon innocent people. And so for America, it matters an awful lot that Ukraine gets an outcome that guarantees their political stability, their sovereign integrity, and their security for decades to come. That's how President Trump delivered deterrence in his first term against Vladimir Putin, which we successfully did. And it's how we can restore deterrence again. And if you're the mother of a young child who's headed to the Marine recruiter station today, you need Ukraine to be successful in demonstrating Western civilization's resolve to push back against these tyrants like Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping.
Before I move to Venezuela, I want to stop in a country that's very near and dear to both of our hearts, which is Israel. I remember the documentary you made with former ambassador to Israel, David Friedman. They've had a very difficult 2 years. They, of course, the slaughter on 10/7, followed by military victory after military victory. But here we are 2 years and a month later, and Hamas is not defeated, and Hezbollah looks like they're trying to come back. How do you assess the situation in the Middle East, Mr. Secretary?
Just as we're not going to persuade Vladimir Putin to be decent, Hamas is a resistance movement sponsored from Tehran. They are not going to lay down their weapons. They're going to have to be coerced and killed. And to date, no one else has signed up to do that except the Israeli Defense Forces. And so I suspect you will continue to see Israel do the necessary. We saw the strike against Hezbollah's leader in the outskirts of Beirut just this past week. We've seen the efforts that they have made in Yemen to go after Houthi leaders. The Israelis understand that October 7th wasn't an aberration. It wasn't just that Hamas lost its mind for a moment. It was a concerted effort on the part of the Iranian leadership to use its terror proxies to change the conditions on the ground in the Gulf Arab states and broadly in the Middle East. So I'm hopeful an international security force will come in, but it's going to have to be prepared to do the hard work of continuing to disarm Hamas and destroy the remaining tunnels. I suspect that the only organization actually prepared to do that is the Israeli government. and they need to complete that task to keep Israel safe, and of course also to convince the Gulf Arab states that we are serious. The United States is serious about pushing back against Iran in ways that will convince them to continue to build out on what became the Abraham Accords. That's really important to us here in America.
Now, you oversaw the Abraham Accords along with President Trump and the whole team there at the White House getting it done in the first term. Saudi Arabia was here last week screwing up traffic, as you well know. But if it was to get them onto the Abraham Accords, I'd be all okay with that. But one of the things I picked up is that there might be a split between MBS and MBZ. Is that, in fact, your understanding, and does that complicate the Abraham Accords for us?
You know, Hugh, it's always a complicated region. Every one of those nations protecting its own interests, and they do vary slightly. My sense, however, is that the course for continued progression of what became the Abraham Accords, where there were many hands, not just mine, but Mr. Kushner, Ambassador Friedman, President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and frankly, MBZ and MBS as well. I think the trajectory there is set. The timeline, more difficult to predict, but I would guess that 5 years from now, there will be many more nations that recognize the fundamental right of Israel to exist, not only in the Gulf, but think of the big Muslim populations in Malaysia, Indonesia, Pakistan. I think they too see the folly of their ways, and I think over time they will come to do the necessary, which is to create a secure, prosperous Middle East, which isolates Iran and brings Israel into that security architecture.
In that architecture, where does Turkey under Erdogan? He's not immortal. All these people are going to pass from the scene, but I don't know what he's doing to Turkey, whether or not it's going to be able to be brought back into the core central of NATO. What's your concern there?
You know, I've watched Turkey. I've always hoped for the best, but my observation is that they have proved nettlesome to Israeli security, nettlesome to the American outlook as well. I hope President Erdogan will see that it's in his best interest to build out his NATO role, and he will begin to look more towards Europe than to the traditions that often have created extremism in the region. It was a very difficult set of relationships during my time. You know, my counterpart when I was the CIA director was a fellow named Hakan Fidan. He's now their foreign minister. He's someone that I think understands this, and I'm hopeful that Turkey can be brought to a place where it is accretive to the very propositions we were just speaking about, and not trying to undermine the peace progress that has been made. That's especially important in Syria. You know, the person who's now leading Syria was someone who we were trying to kill during the Trump's first administration.
Right.
We need to watch this closely. If he's turned a new leaf and he's prepared to try and bring Syria together, an incredibly difficult domestic proposition for Syria, if he's determined to do that and he is focused on that, he can help shape what this looks like. And that means Turkey will have a more logical place for it to find security for itself, and the region can begin to unite in ways that will deliver really good outcomes for the United States.
All right, Mr. Secretary, I want to conclude with the tour of the globe with our hemisphere. When you left office, I'm not sure that Chile and Argentina were on our side, but Brazil might have been. Now that's flipped. Nicaragua remains a problem, but the key bad guy is still Maduro and his backers in Cuba. What do you make of that armada we have down there? What do we use it for?
You know, it is quite something to see the change. I'd add Colombia as another nation that's flipped, and this one against us as well. They were good partners during my time on counter-narcotics efforts. That's no longer the case, I sadly have to say. Look, you don't often take an armada of that scale there unless you have a real goal. President Trump hasn't said clearly yet exactly what the objective is. I'm actually, for the moment, fine with that, so long as we're doing the hard work privately. But we tried during the first term to give the Venezuelan people a real opportunity. And that means, of course, Maduro, the Cubans, the Russians that are there in Venezuela have to decide it's not worth the candle anymore. I am very hopeful President Trump will continue, and Secretary Rubio will continue to put pressure on the regime that gives the Venezuelan leadership there an opportunity to flip the script and bring Venezuela back to where, you know, I was talking to my son the other day. He doesn't remember Venezuela as the powerful economic force that it was. It wasn't that long ago, Hugh. It is possible to get it back there. It's going to take an enormous amount of pressure from the United States. I don't think for a moment that we put a carrier the size of the Ford down there if we didn't have an objective that went beyond just practicing our seamanship in the Caribbean.
Yeah, it ought to be the richest country in the hemisphere other than the United States, and Mexico the same way, given their natural resources. Let me close by asking you about the Department of Defense in a big picture kind of way. There are new companies emerging like Palantir and Anduril, and I'm not sure what your relationships are with any or all of them, and I'm not asking for that reason. Do you think we are on the edge of a transformative period of defense acquisition where the weapons of war change rather quickly and we're no longer a carrier-dependent country? And I like my carriers, don't get me wrong, but it does seem to me like the hypersonic, the missile age has arrived upon us, and a lot of things that we used to count on don't matter that much anymore.
Hugh, this is a great question. As a former Army tanker, I like my M1 tanks too, just like the carriers. They may have seen their best days. They're not unimportant. We still need them. But your point about how we think about conflict and war has fundamentally shifted. I have a horse in the race. I'm trying to help a bunch of folks who are trying to become the next agile folks who can provide those things. So I have a commercial interest in that. But I do think the Department of War is on the cusp of making this transition. I worked with Boeing, I worked with Lockheed, I worked with Northrop and Raytheon, all of them, but they are not nimble beasts. And the conflict today requires nimble beasts. And we have the innovation, creativity, human capital, and actual capital to deliver that like no one else in the world. I'm confident that Steve Feinberg, who's now got the acquisition ball in his hands at the Department of Defense, who came out of the private sector, can begin to flip this in a way that we can be sure that when there is a conflict, a serious conflict, that the United States has the tools of modern warfare. Think you're right about space, you're right about hypersonics. Think also cyber and counter UAS and the ability to do jamming and counter jamming. All of those things, which we didn't even think about 25 years ago, they're now happening real time, and the iterations must be able to happen that way as well. We need a Department of War that can procure those weapons off the shelf, real time, and deliver them for our soldiers and sailors in a way that can save lives and deter our adversaries. I'm really hopeful that we will turn the corner there.
Last question, Mr. Secretary. Almost a decade ago, you gave me an interview out at Langley when you were running the CIA, and I asked you a question whether or not you were confident that we could keep up in the cyber espionage game, that every time China hit us, we could hit them hard. And you gave me a very spy-like answer. You winked and you nodded, and you didn't say anything. Are you still confident that we're staying abreast or ahead in those domains?
You know what's great, Hugh? Now that I'm out of government, you can get Mike Pompeo unplugged. So all to the good. Yeah, I'm still confident that we can. We certainly have the capability. What I worry more about is the policy. I'm not sure that we still have our counter cyber policy in the right place to achieve deterrence. We wouldn't necessarily see it, but I am hopeful when they are striking, we are responding back. We are saying that was actually us who did that. We can do it again, and we can do it 100x that. So stop screwing around with our internal cyber capabilities and our capacity to live our lives here in the United States. And if we don't do that, if we just allow them to take over the colonial pipeline as they did in the first year of the Biden administration, or conduct operations against us, and we just say, that's over, we got through it, we will see this continue to spike. And it's not just big nation states, it's rogue actors too. We have the capability to solve it. We have the capability to deter. We simply need a policy that can deliver that very deterrence.
Thank you, Mr.
Secretary.
Thanks. Always a pleasure to talk to you. I will be right back, America, and we'll post Secretary Pompeo over at my YouTube channel. Scott Bessent, our fabulous Secretary of the Treasury. Boy, Donald Trump did well with this pick. Was on CNBC with Rebecca Quick today and had this to say about Taiwan. Now, he's the Secretary of Treasury, but he knows about Taiwan, how central it is to the Western economy, indeed to the world economy. Here's what he had to say.
Why don't we start with this latest, what we're seeing right now, and what we've heard from this conversation with President Trump and President Xi. The readouts from the two countries were a little different. Obviously, the United States has a very important push on making sure that China does step up its purchases of soybeans. How is that going?
Well, first of all, Becky, to set the record straight, President Trump initiated the call 30 days after the historic meeting in Busan, South Korea, between the two leaders. They have a great relationship. And as far as the soybeans, the Chinese are right on schedule in terms of the cadence of their purchases. Over the next 3.5 years, we're going to see the 87.5 million metric tons purchased by the Chinese, minimum, and they are right on schedule.
There have been some reports coming from China where their take on this talk is a little different. At least what they emphasized in the talks was a little different. They bring up both Ukraine and the U.S. position and the Chinese position on Taiwan. What is the U.S. position on Taiwan at this point?
U.S. position on Taiwan is unchanged. And on Ukraine, President and Party Chair Xi agreed that the peace in this Ukraine conflict, they must move forward, and they agreed to work together on it.
That is it. Unchanged on Taiwan. The implicit argument is that we are pledged to their defense and that there are two Chinas. One China, two systems. And that second system, Taiwan system, the Republic of Taiwan system, is inviolate, and they are our ally. Now, let's go from a very diplomatic, very smart guy over to the View. Sarah Haynes, cut number 10.
And know who you're talking to. He's not only a national hero, but he's the husband of someone who was shot in the head at an event. He is the epitome of the beginning of some of the most damning examples of political violence we've seen. So know who you're talking to. But I also we always talk about how Trump came in on America First. A week ago, we saw him defending a Saudi prince over a reporter. And now he's turning to a deep public servant that he disagrees with and jumps straight to traitor, hang him. You've got to have some perspective on what you're stoking here, because I would argue that what Mark Kelly did was, Alyssa, reading what's already obvious. These are the oaths they take. They're repeating it in case people that they can relate to in our military services are put into a situation, which for the first time in our history, they may. Remember when Mark Esper had to tell Donald Trump you couldn't shoot protesters in the legs? So, there's the Constitution and laws, lawful and legal things, and then there's shoot the protesters in the legs. They might come up against the situation.
And then there's Sarah Haynes believing Mark Esper, making stuff up in a book that did not sell. Then there's Mark Kelly. I'm very, very sorry that Gabby Giffords got shot in the head by a schizophrenic. It gives him no additional credibility. The video he made was highly irresponsible. All 6 of them have been caught unable to point to a single illegal order or unconstitutional order. It was a stunt, and they've been called out for a stunt. And the president did the President Trump thing, amplify it, underscore the stunt. Remember the fact that Mark Kelly is a stunt man. Mark Kelly run for president? I don't think so. Look at the China stuff. I do want to remind you right now, Angel Tree is a ministry of prison fellowship directed specifically at the children of parents who are in prison. Sometimes it's dad, sometimes it's mom, sometimes it's both parents and they're living with grandparents or an aunt and uncle, or they're in foster care. But that doesn't mean that they stop being the son or daughter of the man or woman who's in prison. And they love to hear from mom or dad on Christmas. They love to get a Christmas present from them. They love to get a note. And Angel Tree make that all happen for $30 a kid, and they throw in a Bible, and they establish a relationship with the child. Don't you want to be a part of that? $30 per child. If you sponsor 10, $300, that goes a long way. 10 Christmases made. 10 children who hear from their mom or their dad or both parents behind bars who can't be with them on Christmas but can be there in spirit with a note, with a present, with a Bible, with a connection to a prison tree, Angel Tree volunteer prison fellowship ministry. Please be generous. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. Or you can call it in the old-fashioned way at 1-800-206-2764, 1-800-206-2764, 1-800-206-2764. That music means Lilacs is in the house, as in Lilacs over at X. You can read everything James writes at jameslilacs.substack.com. James, every year Google puts out a map of Thanksgiving side dishes. These are unique searches of Thanksgiving side dishes over the past week. And I would like your commentary on a few of these. First of all, Minnesota and Virginia share in common deviled eggs. Were you aware that deviled eggs were loved in Minnesota?
No. Every year one of these things comes out. Every year it's wrong. Deviled eggs have not been a part of any Thanksgiving that I've participated in my long tenure on this planet, as a matter of fact. No, I don't remember my mom carving them up and gently streaking the paprika atop the yolk. First of all, paprika is one of those devilish spices from which you may not recover. So it's not, it doesn't play large in North Dakota cuisine. So that's wrong. It ought to be one of the two. I mean, it ought to be, the side dish should be this green bean thing with these crunchy little onions on top, preferably Durkin, or it ought to be a can of gelled cranberry. And to make it truly authentic, should not just be fresh. It should have the ridges of the can still on the cylinder.
I agree.
There should be a
I
ceremonial
agree.
patting of the can to get it out. That is as much as an important part as Dad doing the thing with the knives.
The green bean casserole to which you refer is, in fact, most searched in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Kentucky. However, New Hampshire is unique. New Hampshire has roasted Brussels sprouts, which, again, has never been in any Thanksgiving dinner I've ever been a part of. How about you?
No, and again, they make these things up out of stuff that they get from searches. The people who are searching from these things have no idea what they're doing. The really, truly important dishes that people know, they know how to make them because their mother or their father passed them down from generation to generation. So that's what skews this thing in the first place. Is lefse, I got to ask, lefse, is that anywhere in the North Dakota and Minnesota list of side dishes?
No, we got baked mac and cheese in North Dakota. We have stuffed mushrooms in South Dakota, and we have ramen noodle salad in Nebraska.
Ramen noodle salad. Yes, that tradition going back, I'm sure, centuries and centuries. Listen, lefse is an intrinsic part of the culture up here. And for those people who don't know what it is, it's basically a potato tortilla. You make it, you put it flat, you can put lingonberry on it if you want to be authentic. But what you really want is the butter, you want the cinnamon, and you want the sugar. Now, it's an amazing thing because it's dessert that has been recontextualized as part of the whole starch and carb meal. It ought to be sitting there waiting for you at the end with the pies. But no, here it is, sweetness and light and fat and carbs and the rest of it as part of your actual Thanksgiving meal. And we love it here. So if that's not on the list, everything in that list is absolutely suspect completely. Ramen.
Well, in Delaware,
seriously.
the list tells me in Delaware that brie mini tarts are must have. However, 5 states have the side dish in common: Massachusetts, West Virginia, New Mexico, Arizona, and California all have stuffing in common. Now, that is, to me, a pretty normal reaction, right?
It is. I went to high school with the way by Brie mini tart. She was lots of fun. Stuffing, of course, is part of it, but I'm not sure that stuffing qualifies as a side dish. Stuffing is an intrinsic part of the bird itself. Now, everybody has their secret recipe, and you look across the table and say, "Oh, I must get this." Do I detect fennel and cardamom? And is that lark's brain? Is there a little bit of that in there? And you want to get the recipe, and nobody ever makes it because everybody has their favorite. I could take any manifestation of stuffing you want, from the stuff that comes out of a box to the stuff that's got chopped gizzard and minced pancreas in it. It's all great. Everything is great. There's no such thing as a bad Thanksgiving meal. And if something does go awry, if the ramen noodles don't come out perfect and the rest of it, it doesn't matter, because the best Thanksgivings are actually the ones that have a memorable element that you can remember. Otherwise, it's just a parade going back into the distance of wonderful, slightly dry birds. So if I have a wish for you and yours, Hugh, it's that somebody Googles one of these things under the misapprehension it's what you want, makes a fabulous cock up of cooking about it, and everybody has to sit there with a frozen smile on their face while they
All I
nod
want
along.
are the
Yes.
Trader Joe's baked rolls. I like those. Okay, James, now I had to come up with a question to pose to the Thanksgiving dinner of adults, not the kiddie table, but the grown-up table. And I came up with the question, what book has impacted your life the most, excluding scripture of all sorts? How would you answer that question?
Wow, what a tale. Off the top of my head, maybe I'll say A Clockwork Orange. Because it's actually, even though it has a bad rep, it is brilliantly written. It was written while
Really?
drunk. There's a lesson there. It was written while drunk. The attack had happened to Anthony Burgess's wife, and he sort of got it out of his system by writing that book. It shows how you can invent a language for a book and bring your readers right along with. But it's about the individual versus the state. And a lot of people just think that's the violent movie where the guy's just running around toll-chalking everybody to Beethoven. No, it's about the right of the individual versus the right of the oppressive totalitarian state. And what's more, it's a lesson for anybody who wants to publish something these days, because when they gave it to America, they said, no, you know what? it's got a happy ending. We need to carve that off. We need to take off the lesson of the book and just have him be an unregenerate thug at the end of the book. That'll go down better in America. So, in terms of how it was composed, what it meant to the author, what a brilliant literary series of inventions it was, how it was treated when it got into the marketplace, and how it took an entirely new life when it became a movie is an indication for any author of what they can expect if everything goes right. For those of us who've had a few
what
things
you've
go
just
wrong.
proven, the efficacy of my question. A, you surprised me. B, you gave a very interesting dissertation on why that would be your selection. But I got to know, what age did you read that at?
Well, I think I was 5 or 6. Previously, my favorite book was Good Night and Moon, the nihilism of which has still haunted me to this day. What that brush means, I don't know. Why there's mush, I can't say. No, I read that when I was about 16 years old, and it was a foundational book, precisely because you have an anti-hero who charms you in his way, who's an absolutely unregenerate 15-year-old thug, but nevertheless is emblematic of everybody because he is an individual and he has rights that the states cannot take away. So yeah, that would be it. I mean, it's the first book that flew off the top of my head.
Will you try that question at your Thanksgiving dinner?
I may indeed, and it'll be fun if somebody just sort of, does the whole chin scratch thing and eventually comes up with, Now We Are Five by by A.A. Milne or some other cool thing. There are so many parents that are going to be present at this table who've done nothing but read 3 or 4-year-old books that they're probably going to be resigned.
Yeah, it's going to be Peppa Pig. No, give them a moment. You might want to lead. Give them a moment to warm up. Lilacs, have a great Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And remember, lilacs.substack.com. JamesLilacs.substack.com to you. JamesLilacs.substack.com. And you will thank me. I'm so glad to be doing the show tomorrow because I will be free of all the Thanksgiving angst of preparation. I'll walk in pretty much towards the end of the gathering, and that will be good. Let's play a little bit again in case you missed it. Donald Trump pardoning the birds this morning, cut number 3.
The turkeys being pardoned today go by the names of Gobble and Waddle. When I first saw their pictures, I thought we should send them, I shouldn't say this. I was going to call them Chuck and Nancy. But then I realized I wouldn't be pardoning them. I would never pardon those two people. I wouldn't pardon them. I wouldn't care what Melania told me. Darling, I think it would be a nice thing to do. I won't do it, darling.
And then cut number 4.
Before going any further, I want to make an important announcement because you remember last year, after a thorough and very rigorous investigation by Pam Bondi and all of the people at Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, the White House Counsel's Office, and the Department of Everything. We have a Department of Everything. You know what that is? I think that's called the White House. Into a terrible situation caused by a man named Sleepy Joe Biden. He used an auto pen last year for the turkey's pardon. So I have the official duty to determine, and I have determined that last year's turkey pardons are totally invalid, as are the pardons of about every other person that was pardoned other than, where's Hunter? No, Hunter's was good. That was the one pardon, Pam, that was good, right? The rest of them are all invalid. I don't know what the hell you're going to do about that, but now we're going to take a little of the joking. That is a mess. But they're hereby null and void. The turkeys known as Peach and Blossom last year have been located, and they were on their way to be processed. In other words, to be killed. But I have stopped that journey, and I am officially pardoning them. And they will not be served for Thanksgiving dinner.
So, and people say he's not generous. He went back and he corrected the auto pen pardon of the turkey. Good for him. Let me remind everyone over at HughHewitt.com, there's a banner at the top. Please be as generous as possible to Prison Fellowship, the Angel Tree Ministry that makes such a difference in the lives of the kids whose mom and dad won't be with them on Christmas. $30 adds another child to our roll. If you can do 90, that's great. If you can do 300, that's 10 kids. Thank you in advance. This audience is always very generous. The banner's at the top of HughHewitt.com. And while you're on the internet tonight, head over to YouTube, find my channel, Hugh Hewitt YouTube, like and subscribe. That's what I want to thank you in advance for doing. 99,200 of you have already done that. I have in my mind that 800 of you are driving around intent on doing that when you get home. Don't forget, YouTube, Hugh Hewitt, Google it, like and subscribe.